everybody. Welcome back to the Unwrapped Podcast.
Hey, it's
your girls, Christina and Kallie. We're so excited to be here and excited to talk about a very interesting topic that I think is near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, to kick off this topic, I have a stat for you.
She always does.
So, up to 4% of the global population lives and suffers with HS. And I'll let you speak more to, what is HS and, what does it look like? But it is so underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed that they don't even know if that's like the true prevalence of, the skin disease. So tell our audience in your clinical point of view, like what is HS? What do you look for? And then we'll get to why we're talking about HS.
Yeah, so HS, for those of you who don't know, is Hidradenitis Suppurativa. The pronunciation may be wrong. I know people pronounce it differently. I remember seeing it for the first time as a wound care nurse in the clinic, and it is really heartbreaking, this disease process. In simple terms, it's basically the infection of the hair follicles, so you're really seeing it in the areas of like the groin, pubic area, armpits. You'll hear more about it from our guest today, who is an HS survivor and has dedicated her life and her company to HS and to the patients that it affects. But it is 100% misdiagnosed. I think, doctors aren't super familiar with it. And if you're not dealing with a wound care provider or someone who knows, you're kind of being tossed around the healthcare system of what is wrong. Like, I don't understand. And I remember the first time seeing it, our medical director, Dr. Gamble, was explaining it to me and actually telling me at that time, many, many years ago, of what the intervention was. And it's just, I don't know, it just seemed so barbaric to me and like so aggressive. But it makes sense, right? Like if you look up the disease process and understand it, like it makes sense. But essentially, like treatment was typically because of where your pubic area is and like all of the skin hair follicles, because they're infected, they basically like remove that area and do like a skin graft in that area. So you're basically, plus you don't have any hair. But second, but then that area, if you think about it, it's so moist and it's such a hard place to bandage, to manage, armpits as well. Like there's just other issues that come along with it. So anyway, not every patient wants that much of an aggressive treatment. And so we're really just dealing with it on a case by case basis. But again, I think the hardest struggle from a wound care perspective is dressings. Like how do you dress something like that? And these areas are constantly oozing. Again, you're sweating, it's hot, it's moist, nothing's going to stick. Forget a foam or a bandage of any type with tape. We met our guest at SAWC Fall. So yeah, Kallie, tell us more about that.
Yeah, Christina, I still get the chills thinking about that. So like opening ceremonies at SAWC are hit and miss with their keynote speakers. Right. I remember I'm literally on my laptop trying to finish up some educational initiative for our clinical teams. You're dealing with the clinical issue. So you're like texting away at everyone. And I just remember when Suzanne started speaking, we both kind of like stopped what we were doing. I like shut my laptop and we were just completely enthralled in her story. And it was so heartbreaking to know, and also like I give props to her for going up there and talking about this, right? What it was like to live with HS, to go so long without it being diagnosed as HS. And she shared pictures, and I think the entire room, like I have chills thinking about it right now because the whole room was just like, oh my gosh, like this is real life. And hearing her story, we immediately were like, we need to talk with this woman.
She's amazing. She is incredible. And I love her passion for it. What she did with her life because of this. She didn't let it defeat her. As somebody who has a chronic illness myself, like I get it. It's really easy to go down a dark path, but instead she brought light to it and wanted to help others that are suffering. Yeah, she is incredible. First of all, you know how I am with accents. Love a good accent. So with her Irish accent, I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And then, I looked up and then you looked up and we looked at each other. And I remember whispering to you like, oh my gosh, like you never hear anything about this type of wound type. It's one of those outlier wound types, right? Like we all know the basic diabetic foot ulcers, venous ulcers, arterial. Every wound care nurse I know gets an HS patient, but you don't ever hear it talked about. So I just loved that they brought a keynote speaker that was a patient herself that can talk about it firsthand. They've had great keynote speakers before, but this I think hit different because it was a patient. She also was in the industry, and so she kind of hit on both sides. But me as a clinician, I love hearing patient stories and like how what we're doing impacts them, because that's why we're all here. Like, what are we doing? It's bigger than just products and companies and things like that. It's about the patient at the end of the day. And, I know that's what you and I are really passionate about. And so when you hear it from their perspective, I think it just really, it hits different.
Yeah, and I think you kind of nailed it too. She's really not from the industry, right? She is a baker by trade, which we need to go to Ireland. Go to her.
I'm going to be there. So I might have to hit her up.
I'm so jealous. We're doing a girls' trip. We're going to Ireland together.
Yeah, it's a work trip. It's fine.
We're gonna visit there. They have like the UK wound care conferences. We can go to one of those. But anyways, I feel like because she's not from the industry and she didn't want to get into the industry, but what she wanted to do was help patients like herself know that this isn't the end of their life. They don't have to put their life on pause every time they have an outbreak, right? And she like one of her, and I'm not gonna go into her story because she's gonna tell it for us. But I just remember her like, as a baker, worried like, I can't have a dressing falling out while I'm baking other people's food. This has to change. I can't just pause my life. It's already painful. The last thing I need to do is just like not do anything. And so for her to like use that and her experience and to create something so innovative for HS patients, and we'll let her explain, her product Hidrawear. But also, like, when we first read or heard about this product, we were like, there are so many other wounds too in hard to heal places that could benefit from this. So
My head was spinning. Do you remember? And our CEO, Mike Comer, was there as well. And we kind of gave each other a glance and we were like, what about for this patient, for this patient? And that's what I love about innovation. And I think that's what drives us overall as a company of innovation is, yes, we wanted it for this type, but it can impact so many. And that's what it was. And that's why we were so excited to partner and learn more about Hidrawear and what else we can use. And so I challenge you clinicians who are listening out there, like, don't be thrown off because it was made for HS patients. Think about all your other patients that are dealing with wounds in these areas, because this dressing is super, super cool. So can't wait for you guys to hear it. We're going to show you guys the interview now, and can't wait for you guys to meet her.
get out the tissues because you're going to need them.
So good. All right.
And of course, you're dealing with a flare up right now, and I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Look, I'm absolutely used to the flare-ups, to be honest. So you kind of just get on with it. And then I was telling my sister about it. 'Cause she was like, "Are you going to come to Pilates with me?" And I was like, "Do you know what? I'm going to skip this one." She's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I showed her. And she was like, "Oh, no." And I was like, "Oh, it's fine. I've had, like, when you've kind of been living with it for your whole life, you kind of just get on with it."
Yeah.
But I've definitely slowed down, and then I definitely do know like what I can and can't do. So I'm just taking it easy for the next few days until I feel, because I need to be in top shape for SAWC.
Yes, which comes up in a few weeks, which I guess is a good segment. So, Christina and I, we talked about this because we already recorded like our intro and stuff, but we were talking, and I remember opening ceremony and the keynote speakers at SAWC have historically been kind of boring, for lack of a better word, right? It's nothing new or interesting. It's things that, we've all been talking about and things like that. But I was finishing up an educational piece on my computer. She was handling something going on in a clinic. And you get up and start talking. And I just remember looking at Christina and she looks at me and like, I like shut my computer. She puts her phone down and we were just like hooked on every word. And so I just think it was like one of the smartest things that SAWC has ever done is asked you to be a keynote speaker. So I guess that kind of goes right into it. From your perspective, what has it been like living with HS? What is HS for, our audience that may not be familiar with it?
Yeah. Well, I would describe HS as really painful lumps and lesions that come and go in my armpits and groin. But I suppose the broader definition of HS is that it's a chronic inflammatory disease caused by a dysfunction of the immune system, which isn't fully understood yet, that presents with or causes these horrific lesions to form in the armpits, the buttocks, the groin, sometimes under the breast, behind the ears, the back of the neck, anywhere where there's hair follicles. Really, you can develop a HS lesions. They're just more commonly found in the armpits and the groin and the buttocks. These lesions do come and go. They flare. I'm having a flare at the moment, as I just said, and the duration, the size, and the frequency of these lesions can really vary depending on the patient. And there's, I suppose, various stages of severity as well. So there can be mild disease, moderate, or severe disease. And the worst thing about HS is that it progressively worsens over time in a lot of patients, and it's very commonly misdiagnosed. So while the patient is waiting to receive a diagnosis, which is on average 10 years, their disease is worsening and spreading to new areas of the body. So I want to thank you for inviting me on to speak about this, because it's such an important topic and something that's really easy to diagnose if you know about it and if you know what to look for. What's it like to live with HS? I suppose my story really does start when I was a little girl. I was 12 or 13 and I started developing these lumps in my bikini area. And, you know, I was so embarrassed about what was happening. Your body's changing anyway. You're going through puberty. You're a little kid. And I was just, you know, really ashamed and thought for some reason that I contracted an STI, which I know I hadn't. I was just a little kid. But, you know, when you're a child and you don't know what to think about what's going on. And so I hid it from my parents, and this became kind of a normal thing. I would try to manage it at home on my own. And a lot of patients do delay seeking care. On average, it takes about 3 years for a patient from the onset of symptoms to even seek care, whether that's from a parent or a clinician. So I hid it for just over 3 years until it got really bad. And I was, I was desperate at this stage, and I told my mum, and she brought me to our family doctor. And unfortunately, at the time, our family doctor wasn't aware of HS. So he diagnosed me with just various skin infections and abscesses. And so I was treated for years with antibiotics. So I would have a flare up, I'd go to the doctor, I'd get my antibiotics. The flare would kind of calm down, I'd get a scar, and it would come back again a few weeks later, back to the doctor, more antibiotics. And so this kind of cycle went on and on and on until it became so bad at one point that I was sent to the hospital for emergency surgery. The doctor thought I had cellulitis, but it wasn't cellulitis. It was just a really bad flare-up of HS. So I suppose the first thing about living with HS is the uncertainty and not knowing what's wrong with you. It's really difficult because you're, as a patient, trying to, you're going to the doctors for help, but you're also trying everything you can yourself at home. And like, you would pay any amount of money for anything that claims that it will help. So I did a lot of that kind of alternative therapies and treatments and, acupuncture and lots of different things. And to be fair, some things did help with my health in general. But for the most part, HS is pretty relentless. So it always came back. I needed a surgery then after that, the emergency department visit, and then subsequently needed a lot more surgeries in very short time to get spaced quite closely together over the next few years. So you'd just be recovering from a surgery and a new lesion would be developing. And that's actually one of the worst parts of HS, is that you kind of get some relief, but then it comes back, or it might come back in a new area. And sometimes I've had scars or wounds from surgery that are just nearly healed, and new lesions will pop up in the same area. So it's really relentless and just, I suppose, mentally draining as well as literally physically draining.
I can imagine, just like, I mean, going back to like when you hid it from your parents and things like that because you were so young, you didn't know what was going on. I mean, that's truly heartbreaking, but it really shows like the resilience of you and other people living with HS that you just know like I have to continue on.
Yeah.
And really going through that like mental turmoil of doctors saying, "Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Here's some antibiotics," right? And we all know the effects of long-term use of antibiotics, which now that's putting a whole different, not maybe pain, but discomfort on your body while you're still just trying to recover and get, and like hoping for that moment of relief, only for it to last, days before it's back.
Yeah. And the thing with HS is, for the most part, it's not actually an infection. It is like an inflammatory disease and it looks like an infection because it's very red, it's tender, it's sore, it's warm, it's producing exudate. When like these lesions, when they rupture, they look like a huge infected abscess. But for the most part, unless there's a secondary infection, it's actually not infected. And the antibiotics are used for their anti-inflammatory properties rather than their antibacterial or antimicrobial, I don't know the correct term, but properties. So it's a funny one.
That was something when you shared your story at SAWC and like showing the pictures and really letting, yourself be vulnerable in that moment. I think every single person in that room was just, we felt for you. There's, a lot of different people are suffering from chronic diseases, autoimmune diseases and things like that. And I think for someone like you to get up and, say like, life can continue. There's going to be moments that it's going to be really painful. There's going to be moments that you don't want to get out of bed. But for you to like really go on and like kind of create, the life you want, it's just there's like so much respect for you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Like maybe people that,
It's
that go
lovely.
through this and like what you've gone through, they just maybe they wouldn't have chased their dreams. And I think the moment too in your story about, finally being diagnosed with HS. And then you're like,
Hmm.
now what? What are these next steps? Right. And
Yeah.
for the patients out there that don't know they're living with HS or they do know that they have HS, like, any advice you have for them? Anything that they should be asking their doctor?
After the diagnosis and getting on with life. And I suppose I remember absolutely getting diagnosed as a really bittersweet moment, because you finally have a name for the disease and then you're kind of like, yes, we can cure it. But then you're told, there's not actually a proper real cure for this. We can manage it. We can reduce the severity possibly with different medications, but you're going to have this for the rest of your life. I also think for me, like being able to do all of this is a gift, and I do it for myself, but also for the people who have given up or are about to give up because the disease is so bad. And I consider myself very lucky in a sense, because I have, great supportive family around me. I've got good healthcare. I am well, I suppose I'm able to cope with this because of the gifts that are in my life, where there's a lot of people that aren't. And when I started surveying patients and talking to other patients particularly about wound care and how they're coping and managing with that, I was so shocked, Kallie, that like this was happening and no one was really doing anything about it. And I just couldn't, people responding to my surveys with personal responses, and some of them were, talking about ending their lives or like not being able to participate in games with their children, not being able to work, dropping out of school or college. And just the impact that this disease has on people's lives is profound. And it I just couldn't believe that there was no real wound care solutions available for people with HS, because wound care, the actual disease is a nightmare to live with anyway. You've got very painful, like even now, even just sitting like this is a little bit painful for me because I have a lesion here in my armpit. When I went to bed last night, it took me ages to find a position that I could just sleep comfortably in because it was so sore. So I would normally kind of maybe turn on my side, but I can't sleep on my side now. So I'm kind of on my back going, oh, it's like it impacts everything. And, or even doing the shopping or putting your handbag on, you really have to adjust little things to accommodate this disease. And so many people are really struggling with it. And I was just so compelled to proceed with what I'm doing, and even more so as I hear the results that we're having from our products as well.
Yeah, so I think that's like kind of a good segue into that moment of just clarity of like, I need to do something for, other patients, right? Like, I know at one point in your story, you're talking about, trying to put dressings in your armpits while also baking, right? I don't know if our audience knows this, but Suzanne's a baker by trade. So, and, the survey, maybe trying to also live, your daily life and the pain. Do you think that's kind of what led you to this, epiphany of sorts?
Well, the epiphany came before the survey, actually. But I trained as a chef and then subsequently in confectionery arts, and I opened my own bakery. And, you're wearing white chef's uniforms. Chefs always wear white jackets, and they have to be clean. It's a really important thing when you're working in a good kitchen that you are clean. It kind of demonstrates that you're that you're a good worker, that you're good at your job, that you're not covered in chocolate or whatever. You become kind of obsessed with keeping your whites clean. And I was particularly obsessed because I had these huge oozing abscesses and lesions, like just draining constantly out of my armpits and on my inner thighs at stages as well. And you're moving, you're like, you're flipping things, you're rolling things, you're making things with your hands. It's you're just very mobile in a kitchen. So any type of dressing that I used would either fall off because it was like maybe a gentle adhesive, like a silicone. And when you're moving around that much, it just eventually kind of peels away. Even when you put an adhesive on an armpit like that, in that position, and you move your armpit down, the adhesive already starts to peel away from the edges of your skin. Oh, sorry. So then I tried like the stronger adhesives and the island dressings, and they would stay in place. But then when I went to change them, they would damage my skin, especially when you're kind of applying and removing dressings in the same area over and over again. It's not just kind of for a couple of days. We're talking days and weeks of applying and removing adhesives. So then you end up trying to go, okay, I'm going to put it in this position today, and then tomorrow I'm going to rotate it. So it's not, and then the next day I'm going to rotate it again, or I'll use a much bigger one so that it's not, you have to come up with these mad like ideas to just try and not damage your skin. And then I was trying the non-adhesive dressings, but with tape. So then I'd be like taping like over my chest, or bandaging right over into under my chest and over my shoulder, like making a big sling for myself. So then you can't really move properly. So I just couldn't really find anything that worked properly for me at all. Yeah, I was getting more and more frustrated with this. But then the night that really kind of was the nail in the coffin for my life with no HS wound care was my friend's bachelorette party. Because we're all, having a great time. We'd rented a house and we were, we'd balloons and we were, having a great night. And her mother-in-law arrived. And I went to shake the mother-in-law's hand, and the dressing I was wearing in this armpit fell out of my clothes and onto the floor. And, it was there was a lot of exudate in it. It was embarrassing. I put my foot on it. I kind of pulled it back towards me. Kind of was like, oh,
Yeah.
I picked it up, went to the bathroom. I tidied myself up. So I was just like, do you know what? This is not good enough. It's just not good enough that I can't enjoy a night out with my friends. It's such an important event, without having this. It's just like, I've had enough. And it had happened to me lots of other times as well. I've had dressings fall down the leg of my trousers. I've had all sorts of leaks and left stains on furniture and beds and clothes. And, it's just something that is constantly in the back of your head when you have HS, is like, how is there a stain there now when I stand up? Or, have I actually leaked and everyone can see? It's almost like the paranoia of maybe having a period leak.
I was just about to say, it reminds me of like, I don't think any woman ever grows out of that, fear. I mean, I just like a few days ago, I was like, told my husband at the store, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need you to look at me when I walk away, right? Like, and so I feel like not only are you living with, that, but you're also living with something on a much bigger scale. And, and I know you made the comment before of like, black is your favorite color.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, again, I'm probably overusing this word, but heartbreaking to have to think about this, have to always like not be able to, excuse me, wear the dress that you want to wear, wear the blouse, and then do the things that you want to do. And so I think for you to have that moment, in the bathroom at your friend's bachelorette party, like, this has to change.
Yeah. I was
and
so
then,
angry.
I could imagine, and just like, it almost feels like something out of like a book or a movie of just like stepping on it and pulling it back, like, no one's doing this. So
It was. I was like, please, can the ground just open up and swallow me whole, please? No, and like, again, I think I'm quite well able to cope with something like that, where I'm comfortable with my friends, and I like, they were, for the most part at this stage, they all knew there was something wrong with me, but actually they didn't know about the extent of my disease either. And it's funny because they would have seen me over the years. Like, I had a PICC line in at one stage, and I'd be going out to meet them, and I had this thing hanging out of my arm, and they'd be like, "What's that?" And I would go, "Oh, I have to get these antibiotics pumped into me, or the pen, twice a day, and there's a nurse coming to the house." And even that kind of thing is it's ridiculously time consuming for your day-to-day life. Like, but so my friends, I'm not that self-conscious around my friends, but for people who would be, that event would potentially have really ruined their social life, or they might have gone home crying, or not being willing to show their face again for ages until they kind of recover from the embarrassment of it all. And that's the sentiment a lot of HS patients shared with me in the surveys as well, is just this overwhelming shame that they experience as a result of worrying about exudate or leaks or dressings falling off. And I was just really angry for myself. But then after I started surveying the patients, I was even more angry that this whole entire group of patients has no tailored solutions for them. And the thing about HS patients is they're mostly young people. So people in the chronic wound kind of care industries will know, like, the impact of a chronic wound and the impact on people's social lives. They become isolated, they become withdrawn, all sorts of, depression and anxiety, and then the physical side effects. But that the majority of other chronic wounds in that domain happen to people later in life, where HS starts in puberty or early adulthood and is a lifelong incurable illness. And there was nothing really tailored or customized for HS patients.
yeah, and that was really well said. I think there's always that shame that comes towards bodily functions, no
Mm.
matter what it is, and I feel like maybe if HS was more widely known or if they were being diagnosed right away, maybe we could help some of that shame, like the internal shame, or
Hmm.
not wanting to talk about it or, missing out on big important events in life because you are having a flare up, right? And really letting your quality of life go downhill, whereas there could be maybe not, the cure, but there are solutions to help you gain back, that independence and that quality of life. We talk about that all the time in wound care is QOL. What does that actually mean to patients? And I think, one solution is something that you came up with. And I think you know, it's just brilliant in a way that you finally had a moment of like, enough is enough. We deserve better. Us with HS deserves better. So kind of talk us through like, the moment of like, okay, we need more. What happens next? What happens after that bachelorette party? Where do you go from there?
So I had an idea for a while, but that was it. I was like, right, I'm doing something about this. I'm absolutely doing something. And the idea was to have a second skin so that I could attach dressings to the second skin instead of attaching them to my own skin, basically. And so I started creating different prototypes, basically, of a crop top that had holes cut into the armpit area. And then I was making dressing prototypes as well, where the dressing would have, a Velcro fastener and a fluffy background so that they stick to each other. And I actually have, like, I can show you one of the dressings, the proper dressings, not the old prototypes. They are certainly, they are, they're in the museum now. But so, like, the idea was that you can have a dressing that comes in two parts and attaches to itself so that it can work through a garment with holes in it, in essence. And I've put on a crop top here so you can see. And I'm wearing a top underneath this just for my own modesty, but there's panels cut in, or there's holes cut into the treatment panels here. And so the dressing goes in underneath the garment like that. And it just needs to, you kind of secure it in place, or you put it in place provisionally underneath the garment. And then you take the fastener. Sorry, no, I'm just doing this very ad hoc. So apologies if this looks crazy. And then you took these little tabs in. So instead of adhering the dressing to my skin, it's now adhered in essence to the garment. And I can just go about my day until I need to change it. And when I need to change it, instead of peeling away adhesives, I just pull this tab out and take the dressing out and replace it. So it's really quick and easy to use. It's very simple and it's very effective. And I suppose how I got to hear from me making garments and dressings at home on my kitchen table was through some small grants from the government here in Ireland, and then working with the University of Ireland in Galway and a medical device development program that the university runs. And I suppose they adopted me into the program. And then we were able to secure funding from investors, kind of like Shark Tank. I'd be kind of out pitching, this is a huge problem and we have a great solution and we need some funding. So we were able to secure funding and ultimately I was able to build a team. And the team, like, obviously I'm from a culinary arts background. So, I needed to make sure that the people around me were, very experienced in medical devices and in the wound care industry. So I was able to find some phenomenal people to join me, and they saw what I saw, the huge gap and the huge need for people with HS. And they joined the company, and then we developed a range of products and now they're available.
Yeah, and it's really just amazing that you were able to take that leap of faith almost of, believing in something so much that going down a path that you didn't study for, you didn't spend years of your life, doing just to be able to, and not even just help yourself, but help so many others out
Mm.
there. So what is your product and what is your company, Suzanne? Because I know this is going to change the lives of so many people.
Yes. Hidrawear is the product. It's a range of medical base layers. I keep saying garments, but they're actually base layers. And they have holes cut in targeted treatment areas. For example, the axilla, the pubic area, the inner thigh, and the buttocks. So we have a crop top and a t-shirt for the upper body, with the axilla at the moment. And we have boxer briefs for men and women that treat the pubic area, the inner thigh, the groin, and the buttocks. And then we have a range of dressings as well. We have a super absorbent dressing in 2 sizes. The super absorbent dressings are phenomenal, like especially for HS, because HS gushes. It actually, like when a lesion ruptures, you're getting a gush of exudate, and it can be very unpredictable. And the volume, the consistency, and the timing of these lesions draining is just so unpredictable. So I'm wearing my Hidrawear, even though this flare up that I have isn't actively draining yet, it will be. So I'm wearing my Hidrawear, first of all, because it's just very comfortable and it's kind of protecting the lesion. And then secondly, because I know when it does rupture, it's not going to go through my clothes. Then we have a foam dressing, which is a super soft foam designed for, moderately exuding wounds where super absorbent might not be required anymore. So for a lot of people, myself included, when after a flare up kind of drains, it will still trickle and release exudate ad hoc. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to when it's going to produce exudate or drain. It just kind of does. But you might not need a super absorbent for that stage. So we have a step down dressing, which is a super soft foam. We're also developing a range of other dressing types, shapes, and sizes. We are, I suppose, in essence, still a very young company. So we are, we're developing as we go. And we're developing at the moment an upper body garment for breast wounds, so for the axilla and breast, because we know a lot of people with HS get lesions in between their breasts or on their breast or under the breast. And also we've had breast cancer patients using our crop top, and we want to have a just more comprehensive cover for the breast. So that's the system. It's a 3-part system: the base layer, the dressing, and the fastener. And every dressing comes with its own fastener, and the larger dressings come with 2. So they all come co-packed. The garment, or the base layers are washable and reusable, up to, like, it's tested up to 100 washes, but I have mine for years and they're still going strong. They're very durable and breathable material, and they just make living with HS a lot easier, and managing the wound care just a lot less of a challenge. And you kind of forget that you're wearing them. You put them on in the morning, go about your day, and if you do need to change a dressing, it's so quick. It doesn't interfere with your day, and you just kind of go on and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like a peace of mind. I feel like knowing that you're not going to have an embarrassing slip up of your dressing falling out, or you can kind of you have a better range of clothing now that you can wear, that you're not trying to tape a dressing to yourself or trying to fit your life around HS. And I think having this broad range, and even when you said breast cancer survivors, like the first time we saw this, Christina and I both were like, this is, groundbreaking for people with HS, but this is also groundbreaking for patients that do have these non-healing wounds in these hard to dress places.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, I feel in my bones that the more people learn about Hidrawear, learn about HS, we're gonna see this thing take off, because all of a sudden, patients that have just kind of been, shuffled from doctor to doctor, don't really have any answers are going to have a solution now to be able to
Yeah.
get back to their life, right? They're still going to have the
Yeah.
painful flare ups. They're still going to have to, deal with all that. But at least, like you said, these younger individuals, they could still go to school now and not have
Hmm.
to worry that there's going to be a leak and there's going to be people that see this, right? And even like yourself, I can only imagine like trying to roll out dough while keeping a dressing in your armpit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Hidrawear is kind of given you and these patients this freedom to just get back to what they enjoy and not let it just dictate what they can and cannot do because of a dressing.
That's exactly it. I couldn't have said it better myself, because that was the whole point of it. It was, despite all the different surgeries and medications and the PICC line and, all the mad things that I've tried, the alternative stuff, they were so difficult. But the biggest challenge was actually just managing the wounds and leaving my house, just literally being able to leave my house in good timing, and not have to worry about this. That was always my big challenge. Is I can take the medication, I can do the injections, I can have the surgery and recover from the surgery. That's a whole other kind of wound care challenge. But it's the day-to-day exudate, the anxiety. Have I leaked on something? Has my dressing moved? Oh my God, is my dressing missing? And it's just trying to just live your life. And we actually get a lot of feedback from mothers telling us that, my child has gone, started college or started high school now, and they're so much happier about it. We've had men emailing us say, I was able to bring my son to the football match for the first time in a long time. Things like that, just little things that we all take for granted in our day-to-day lives. Have been returned to people who had not experienced them in a long time. And it's not rocket science. It's their dressings, and the fact that providing patients with effective care can have such a dramatic improvement on their quality of life just keeps me going. And I really hope that the rest of the wound care world comes to the party.
I think they definitely will. I know you made a huge impact at, the fall SAWC in Vegas, getting up there and just sharing your story to, I don't know how many people are in that room. So like props to you for getting up there, telling your story and things like that, because there were hundreds of people there. I think they're catching on. I know, and especially like we're probably not the only company that was like, we need to talk to this woman. We need to learn more. We need to learn from her, right? Because truly, not only are you an innovator, you're like the number one patient advocate because you're living through this with these patients, And so I guess like before we wrap today's conversation up, because I could talk to you for hours. So definitely we're getting drinks in Texas.
Yeah.
Or I'll have to come to Ireland, which
Oh,
also, would be
always an
opposable.
option. Yeah.
So, I guess kind of to wrap things up, two things. One, any advice or tips for patients that don't know that they have HS or they've been recently diagnosed with HS?
Yes. So I suppose if you don't know you have HS, but suspect you do, I would find some information that's very credible from your jurisdiction. So if you're in America, find some American literature that explains what HS is. And the HS Foundation has a phenomenal resource page for patients, as does HS Connect. There are two kind of US based websites where you can get loads of information. And similarly, if you're in the UK, there's the British Skin Foundation, or in Ireland, Irish Skin Foundation. So there's loads of, get some credible information and bring it to your doctor and say, look, I think I might have this, so that at least you are, I suppose, because hopefully the doctor will agree with you, but if they're not aware of the disease, it's hard for them to agree or disagree. So if you bring some relevant information, it might be helpful if they're not aware of HS. if you've just been diagnosed, I think my main message is that you're not alone. First of all, there's so many people with HS out there, and more are joining various groups online. I would say definitely try and find support, whether it's from your own family or friends, or online in a Facebook group, or like the group I just mentioned there, HS Connect. They have fantastic activities. Another group, Hope for HS, do in-person support groups and online. So sorry, they do both in-person and online support groups, where there'll be a clinician and a patient advocate running the group. And it's a lovely thing to participate in, because you can talk to other patients who are sharing or have similar experiences to you. And I think that's a real, you know, you feel like you're going through all of this alone, but you really aren't. And sharing your experiences with others will help you and will help others too. And then the other thing I would say is really advocate for yourself, because it's very often, unfortunately, that HS patients are dismissed as being, you're obese, you smoke, you have a very unhealthy lifestyle, fix all of that, and then we'll talk about, you know, treatment. And, you know, I have a bit of a problem with this, because I think I don't know enough about the kind of genetics of HS. And I was talking with a doctor about this recently, and he was saying, you know, there are different body types, and there's different, you know, everyone's different, and there is obesity is an issue in HS patients, and there are some patients who develop it as well as obesity, so they were going in that direction anyway. And then there's some patients who develop it because they became sedentary and depressed and became obese as a result of their disease. So I always just reel when patients, because I'm hearing from patients like, oh, I was told there's nothing that can be done until I lose weight. And it's very disheartening, because maybe that patient put on weight because they couldn't exercise because they're in so much pain, you know. So like, it's not your fault. Sorry, very long way of saying.
I love that you brought it up, because I could just imagine living with this, going to a doctor, someone that you trust, and they're like, well, you need to lose some weight, and then we can look. If it's still there, we'll look into it. Like, we would never tell a diabetic foot ulcer that's open wound, saying, oh, you know what? You need to lose weight and get your diabetes under control, then we'll care for this, right? And I think, you know, the more we have this conversation, you know, the more that your story's heard, maybe the doctors won't immediately go straight to that. Like, well, you've got some underlying conditions, you know, get those in check, then come back and talk to me.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just such a dismissal that could be the reason why so many of these HS patients that are misdiagnosed are having depression, not, you know, thinking these suicidal thoughts and things like that, because they don't feel heard. Like you said, if you're in so much pain and you're not getting enough activity, of course you're going to gain weight, you know?
Yeah.
That
And
shouldn't be.
yeah, and your self-esteem is already on the floor when you have HS, to be honest, because like you feel gross, you're worried about drainage, you are worried that maybe you smell, and you know, you are like, even myself as a young child was full of shame about this. And when I tell my mum the story, when I'm talking to my mum about this now, she's so upset that I felt like I couldn't tell her. And I would tell my mum anything, but I couldn't tell her this. And she's like, why did you feel you couldn't tell me? And I was like, I was just so ashamed. And I think that's so sad. So when a patient who's full of shame and low self-esteem and really, you know, not feeling good about themselves, finally goes to a doctor for help, to be met with and it's, sorry, just to be clear, it's not all, like, there's some amazing doctors and there's lots of great clinicians out there, but the feedback that I get from patients a lot is I was just shut down instantly, told, sort myself out and then we'll look at treatment. And I just think it's really sad. I think particularly for HS patients, just a little bit of extra compassion and patience is needed, especially until you get to know the patient. And I've gone way off tangent here, but I know, for example, with my dermatologist here, if I'm really bad, I can ring the hospital and say, I'm having a really bad flare. Is there anyone that can see me? And they'll be like, yeah, absolutely. And then maybe if I'm not bad, but I have a scheduled appointment, I could ring them and say, I'm actually fine at the moment. And I don't need to, you kind of can develop a relationship where you're co-managing the disease instead of the patient just being disempowered and ashamed and embarrassed and dreading going to the doctor. It could be a really good experience, and it is for a lot of patients, but it's also a horrible experience too. So, sorry, it's a very long way of me saying for newly diagnosed patients, and I hope I haven't scared anyone listening to that now actually with what I've just said, is to advocate for yourself and bring information, speak to other patients, find out as much information as you can. If you have concerns about your treatment, express them. I always suggest keeping a diary of symptoms. I do it myself, particularly if something's going to be good. If I know I'm going to be having a flare up for a long time, I'll either document it with photos, or I'll write down, I was in pain out of 10, from a score to 0 to 10, where 10 is the worst. I was in pain of 5 today. It was 7 yesterday. So my pain's getting better, but it's getting worse. You kind of keep track of your symptoms. And in that way, when you do go to the doctor, you can show them everything that's happened to you, because the doctor only sees you for 10, 15 minutes at one very specific point in time where you've been experiencing this flare for probably weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So bring as much information as you can to the doctor, and also explain the impact on your quality of life, how it's impacting your day-to-day, and stand up for yourself in terms of if you're dismissed, or if you're not happy with the treatment and there is options to seek care elsewhere, maybe seek care elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and I love that advice. I think that's going to be so helpful for, the clinicians hearing, to maybe, take a step back and really listen to these patients when they come and say, I think I have this, here's some information. But also, if patients do listen to this as well, which I hope they are, of knowing, like you said, they're not alone. And we'll make sure that all those resources are linked to this podcast, that people can easily access it. And also, you have an amazing website that has patient stories and blogs. So where can people go to find that?
Yes, it's www.hidrawear.com, and that's Hydra spelled HIDRAWEAR.com. Hidrawear with an I. I always mistype it myself, but I used to, but it's Hidrawear with an I. Hydra for Hidradenitis Suppurativa.
Perfect. We'll definitely, make sure that's linked, so people can easily access that. And, one last thing, if it is a patient that's listening and they know for sure they have HS and they're like, this could change my life, how do they order it? Do they have to go through their doctor?
You can order it directly from the website, but if you are in the States, it is covered on a lot of insurances. Not all insurance plans. Some don't cover any wound care at all. But for the most part, we're seeing pretty good coverage on insurance. So it needs to be ordered through your prescriber, whether that is a wound care center or a dermatologist or a family doctor. It can be ordered, and yeah, that's it. It can be ordered by your clinician, by your treating clinician, and we're on standby and really happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about how to get Hidrawear in the US.
Awesome. And I know we're super excited for HS Awareness Week here
Yes.
in America. It's at the beginning of June. I love that it coincides with Wound Care Awareness Month. I think that, it's really beautiful to really say, hey, look, this could be, treated in a wound care clinic.
Hmm.
We can get you the Hidrawear. We have access to people like yourself and other experts in the field. So really excited about that. And again, I am just so grateful that you took time out of, I know it's late for you in Ireland, so that you
Okay.
took time out of your evening to have this conversation and to, once again, share your story. I honestly don't think I could ever get enough just hearing, the bravery, your resilience, and everything of just saying we deserve more. And, just because you're living with HS doesn't mean it needs to dictate your life. So
100%. And thank you so much for having me. And your point is great. It's so true about HS Week. And I just actually realized, that it is coinciding with Wounds Awareness Month.
wound care awareness, yeah.
Wound Care Awareness Month. And there's been a surge in research and innovation in HS in terms of therapeutic agents like drugs and molecules and topical agents, but not a whole lot in terms of wound care. So it's a really great it's I know we didn't time it on purpose, but it's just very well timed that they coincide, because the wound care side of HS is such a challenge for patients, and we can help so many patients with their day-to-day lives relatively easily, and that's the thing. It's relatively easily managed if you know what you're looking for. And I suppose what I didn't say earlier, and sorry, Kallie, I'm rambling on now, but what I didn't say was it is easy to diagnose HS once you know about it. And there's a very general set of questions that can be asked. And the questions are, has the patient had an outbreak of boils or boil-like lesions in the last 6 months? If the answer is yes, if there was one or more outbreak in any of the common areas, the armpits, the groin, the buttocks, the genitals, the breast, I think, it's most likely HS. And I know we're going to do a lot about awareness during HS Awareness Week, but that's how easy it is to diagnose HS. So if you know what you're looking for, it's easy to diagnose, but you can't diagnose it if you don't know about it. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk to you today and spread the message there as well. And to any patients listening, like I said, you're not alone. And, there's lots of groups out there and there's lots of help. And there is so much research being done in terms of finding effective treatments for HS. I cannot believe how much it's changed. Even since I was diagnosed, the treatment options are vast, much more vast than they were. Oh, sorry.
No,
When
fine.
I just hurt myself. So don't lose hope and don't give up, because there are lots of brilliant minds working on this to try and find effective solutions. So just stay hopeful.
I love that. Thank you again. And if all the clinicians listening in, we'll give you resources to share with patients as well. You can, guide them to this podcast, really hear from someone that is living with it. You never know if they just know they're not alone, like you said, and the impact that it has, the quality of life that they can have with Hidrawear. If you do notice that your, center is diagnosing HS correctly, share with us your tips. Are you using the questionnaire that Suzanne talked about? What other things are you looking for? And I think really the theme of it's togetherness. Together we can get this, out there, make more people aware of HS, make sure patients feel heard and seen, and maybe take away a little of that shame that they're feeling inside. And super excited to, continue our conversation, Suzanne, throughout the next few months and beyond that, and really help, just your mission. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right.
Hearing Suzanne's story and really bringing patients to life It just like reminds me of our number one rule in the company is patients first, always. Like everything that we do, it's because we want a better, outcomes for patients. We want to have quicker healing times. We want to save their limbs. And I just think that having conversations like this, where we actually get the patient side, really brings it back to why we do what we do. And Christina, like you talking about, living with an illness as well and not letting it bring you down. Like, I feel like the quality of life of wound care patients is something that is so under talked about. One of our colleagues yesterday, about when she was a PD in centers, she said she would have like the patients come in. They've been in work boots all day long, take off their sock, and she's like, have you done anything for this one? And they're like, when? Do you want me to do anything about it? So it's just something.
Absolutely. And I think, going back to like our first episode of why you and I wanted to do this type of podcast, to go beyond the industry, right? To go beyond talking to vendors and talking to companies, is because at the root of it, like, what is driving all of us in what we do? And I think at Wound Care Advantage, we're so passionate about it and it shows. And it's funny that you bring up this story, because literally I just had a patient who, very same thing. He works during the day and he has a night job. So he is constantly in it. He's a diabetic. And he, admitted sugars weren't great, wasn't wearing the right shoe. He wore steel toe boots and was walking all night long, and unfortunately got a wound on his toes. And he didn't know about a wound care center. He was going to a podiatrist. And, no shame on any podiatrist. I love podiatrists. One of my favorite ones is one we work with. But sometimes they don't know wound care, and so that doctor told him, well, let's just amputate. It'll be easier. It'll be easier. And, then we don't have to maintain it. And it's like, that's the reality of our patients. And that's, sometimes the feedback they're getting, and they don't know any better. Luckily, this patient knew to find someone that would help him keep his toes, but that's it, right? That's the goal. We don't want to chop off any toes. Now, I know sometimes we have no choice, but I think if we can heal them with our aggressive wound care treatments and show them that there is a way, that it's not going to be easy. It's not once we heal you, it's done. No, it's a long haul. It's for the rest of your life, right? Every disease process we deal with, it's forever. You do have to be committed. But I think being committed is so much easier than losing a toe.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, WCA really stands apart from, other companies that are in our same like scope, is because we're really here for the sustainability of these wound care centers. We don't want to see them close their doors. We don't want to see them give up control where they can't make the decision for the patients that they're caring for every day and truly know, like it's all about today's patients and tomorrow's patients, because wound care is not going anywhere. With the rate of diabetes climbing and climbing year after year, with arterial disease, PAD, things like that, it's not going anywhere, and wound care has to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, shameless plug. If you or your hospital or, a facility, that is struggling with their wound care center, I mean, just call us. We're so happy to just talk about options and talk about solutions. That's really, again, our passion. So, we're here to just talk if that's what you guys need. But yeah, we just want to continue to make sure wound care centers are open. So call us.
Even if it's something like I need patient education or
Yeah.
need hyperbaric resources, like we're here to help. We're here for wound care centers to stay open. So it's not even like if you call us, you're getting into something.
And even like wound care adjacent, I want to say, like, Kallie, you just helped me when a nursing school connected with me and needed education, because she is a nurse. This teacher is a nurse herself and knew the lack of wound care knowledge and reached out and was like, can you provide me with more? That's what we're here for, to not only take care of our patients, but how do we do that? Making sure the next generation of nurses know it as well. So it's I feel like it's a full cascade of like all these pieces, right, that tie into each other. That's the whole point, is how do we get everyone there? So.
Well, I know I enjoy talking with Suzanne every time we talk with her. So I can't wait to see her in a few weeks in the flesh at SAWC. And if any of our listeners are going to be at SAWC, let us know.
Yeah, we can't wait. We want to see you. We want to talk to you. We're going to be doing some fun footage there. I don't know, maybe, spoiler, am I going to see you in real life, Kallie? What? Yeah, you never know, guys. We're wild over here. So yeah, I'm excited for footage from there. So I think, yeah, the next time we see you guys will be at SAWC, and it's in just like a little over a month.
Christy and I are both really short, so don't anticipate like some 5'8" females. No.
No, we live 5'2" and under over here.
Wear platform shoes for that reason.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Unwrapped Podcast. We hope that you found the information and insights provided to be helpful in your wound care journey. If you have any questions you'd like to be answered on the podcast, we invite you to connect with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And place your question or comment under the Unwrapped Podcast post. We look forward to bringing you more wound care insights. Thank you for listening.